Hey there guys, so yeah, I just thought I'd do a video giving my initial thoughts on the Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall rematch that has been announced to take place on April 27th in Leeds. So even though this is a rematch which has probably come in a bit too late, the first fight took place almost 2 years ago, and by the time this rematch actually happens, the fight will be over 2 years ago. It's still a fight that's always been in high demand. Obviously, a lot of people thought that Jack Catterall won the first fight, so it's a fight that a lot of people wanted to see. So I suppose it makes sense for both guys at this stage of their career. Just to get it on and decide and see, who's the best. Whether Josh Taylor can go 2-0 or Catterall can, get the win in the second fight, which a lot of people thought he won the first. So the first fight was very surprising. A lot of people expected Josh Taylor to just go in there and dominate Jack Catterall. Because Jack Catterall going into that fight hadn't really fought at Josh Taylor's level. His best win was probably like O'Hara Davis or Tyrone McKenna, guys who are, British level. And obviously we saw what Josh Taylor did to O'Hara Davis a couple of years ago. Most people were just expecting Josh Taylor to go in there and just stop Jack Catterall early. Even though, Jack Catterall had shown that he was probably a bit underrated in his career up to that point. But, he'd never really been in with anyone at the level of Josh Taylor. So, a lot of people were expecting Josh Taylor to go in there and just dominate him. But obviously we all know that Jack Catterall was able to make it a very difficult fight and a very awkward fight for Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor really had to grit his teeth in the last 4 rounds to get the win on the scorecards. He was dropped in the fight. Both guys had point deductions, even though Josh Taylor's was, a BS point deduction. A lot of people thought the decision was very controversial. Me personally, I didn't really have a problem with the decision. I've watched that fight numerous times. I think there's definitely the fight could have gone either way. I don't think it's some complete robbery like Jack Catterall won. Clearly, I don't think so. I still think it's a fight that could have gone either way. I think Josh Taylor was the aggressor in the fight. I think Catterall did a lot of spoiling. He was holding a lot. There were rounds where he wasn't very active. He was just looking to tie up and survive, especially in the later rounds. Jack Catterall still had his fair share of success. He won, probably at least 5 rounds in the fight. He knocked him down. I definitely think there's a strong argument to Jack Catterall winning the fight, but I still think there's an argument for Josh Taylor winning the fight as well, and it's one that could have gone either way. But it was probably a career worst performance from Josh Taylor up to that point, and it was pretty obvious that he was probably struggling at the weight, and he'd underestimated Jack Catterall. Took him lightly going into the fight, and this rematch is apparently going to be taking place at 140 pounds. Which is questionable. When they were talking about this fight, being in negotiations, they were saying that the fight was going to be taking place at 143 or 144 pound catch weight. But no, apparently the fight's going to be taking place at the super lightweight limit. Josh Taylor is someone who, he's a massive super lightweight. So, and he's been killing himself to make that weight for years. After the first Jack Catterall fight, he said he was going to move up in weight, go up to welterweight. He chooses to stick around at the weight, fights Teofimo Lopez, and then after that fight, he says he's going to go up to welterweight. And 2 years after the Jack Catterall fight, he's still at 140 pounds. I get that Josh Taylor has a big size advantage at 140 pounds, but still, he's not as young as he once was. He's not as young as when he was fighting guys like Miguel Vasquez, Regis Prograis. when he can make that weight back a couple of years ago. In the last two fights, he's clearly struggled to make the weight. And, at his age, he should probably have moved up a couple of years ago. Look at someone like David Benavidez, for example. I mean, he's a massive super middleweight who's able to make the weight now. But, if he was still trying to make that weight when he was about 31 or 32, he would have big struggles making that weight, and he'd probably be quite weight drained. So, the fight being at 140 pounds could have consequences on Josh Taylor's performance. He could be quite weight drained. I remember specifically when he stepped on the scales against for the first Catterall fight. He did look very, very weight drained. He just looked ill on the scales. Just like a skeleton. Barely any water or any muscle at all. Just looked completely drained. Reflected in his performance, it was probably Josh Taylor's worst performance to date. And the thing about the first fight was Josh Taylor really didn't use his skills at all. He sort of fought as a face-first slugger, just a brawler who was just walking into punches. He wasn't using his boxing skills, he wasn't using his inside fighting, which he's very good at. He was just on the front foot, walking into punches, just doing anything to try and just land. I don't think he really went into that fight with a solid game plan. He probably just thought he could just walk through Jack Catterall. So I think going into this fight, Josh Taylor should be a lot more prepared than he was the first time. I expect to see him use his skills a lot more. I expect him to come in with a better game plan. I expect him to use his inside fighting a lot more. His most effective form of fighting is probably inside. We've seen them fight guys like Regis Prograis, just sort of drag him into the trenches, fight him on the inside, pull him into his sort of fight. We've seen him box against guys like Jose Ramirez. He can do that very effectively as well. Just box on the back foot for 12 rounds. So I think he'll have to, use a mix of both. If he can, try and drag Jack Catterall into his sort of fight on the inside. He'll have to have his moments where he'll have to box on the outside. And if Josh Taylor, if this was a prime Josh Taylor who fought like Regis Prograis or, Ivan Baranchyk, I believe that version of Josh Taylor would have beaten Jack Catterall probably quite convincingly. I don't think there would have been any controversy about the scorecards. I think Josh Taylor probably would have won, 9-3, 8-4, something like that. Quite a clear decision win. But going into this fight, I just think, the weight might affect him. It's affected him in his last couple of fights. And we haven't seen Josh Taylor put in a great performance since, the Jose Ramirez fight, probably. In his last two fights, he's looked pretty garbage, to be honest. It remains to be seen whether he can get back to his best. When he was in his undisputed, his run to undisputed, when he was fighting in the World Boxing Super Series, or whether he is just a bit washed up at this point. Whether he has just damaged his body trying to make the weight, and whether he's still the fighter he was a couple of years ago. If he's not the fighter that he was, then Jack Catterall is probably going to win this fight. Because I still think Jack Catterall is a bit underrated. He's got very good skills, very good defense. He's a bigger puncher than people give him credit for. He hasn't got a lot of knockouts on his record because he's not that aggressive. He's quite negative. But he's still the only man to put Josh Taylor on the canvas, even though Taylor's fought punchers like Prograis, Ramirez, Baranchyk. And Catterall's a very good spoiler. He's someone who is able to make guys who fight on the front foot look very awkward. He's able to take them out of their rhythm by holding, and just tying up, just using his spoiling tactics to slow the action down. He's able to do like similar to what Kid Galahad did to Josh Warrington. Just make him look very awkward and make the fight look very dirty and very close. So I think either way, Josh Taylor's going to be in for a difficult fight here. I think Catterall's going to give him a lot of problems, and it just depends which version of Josh Taylor that turns up. If this is the Josh Taylor that we've seen in the last couple of fights, then he's probably going to lose this fight. But if we can see a great performance from Josh Taylor, like we did a couple of years ago, then I think he's got a very good chance of winning this fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this fight, and thanks for watching, and God bless.